Although nothing exists that can be refuted or proved, pleasure is accepted and pain is rejected. Looking around, I find the perception of beings to be truly amazing. They fixate on what is not real as real, so that it certainly seems real. They fixate on confusion when there is no confusion, so that there certainly seems to be confusion. They reify what is indeterminate as determinate, so that it certainly seems determinate. They reify what is not so as being so that it certainly seems so. They reify what is untenable as tenable, so that it certainly seems tenable. Ordinary mind is seduced by trivial sense objects in all their variety. One's useless focus moment by moment extends into a continuum as days, months, years, whole lives go by. Beings are deceived by misconstruing what is not dualistic as dualistic. As a yogin with a pure mind looks inward, awareness without underlying support or basis is free of labels. It cannot be perceived in any way that can be characterized or described. Structured view and meditation are done away with. Given the state of infinite evenness, open, relaxed, and spacious, there is no sense of spiritual practice, for there is no distinction between formal sessions and the periods in between. Everything is unrestricted, completely equal, and uninterrupted. Longchenpa. Continuing with the precious treasury of the basic space of phenomena. This is Darren Littlejohn. Welcome to the 12-Step Buddhist Podcast, episode 101, Addiction and Trauma, a Basis for the Practice of Recovery. The Dysregulated Addict Finding Spiritual Regulation Series, Part 6. Will there be a Part 7? I don't know. We're going to review where we've been thus far, but I'll check in with you first. I feel like saying, I'm Darren, I'm an alcoholic, and then I'm sharing. In a sense, it's kind of like this. I have been watching this show. Called Mom, which is from, I don't know, a while ago. And it's kind of crass, kind of crude. Funny, well written. The characters are in recovery, and they're always sharing at meetings. So each episode is kind of like their life and their situation, and then they're sharing, and then they're at coffee afterwards. So I don't know. I find some comfort in that. But it does make me feel like, okay, there's the sharing part where in the show they basically, I'm buying alcoholic, and then they just go, so it's kind of like, okay, you say that and then you just do whatever. And, well, I won't get into how it was in recovery for a long time, in the many decades of attending 12-step, various types of preferences on how to share, who shares, what's allowed to share, that sort of thing. Definitely endorse that openness, and openness is a part of intelligence. It's part of the personality profile of healthy people, and it's part of the profile of people in recovery who are trying to be on a spiritual path and develop past the limitations, the ones we've been kicked with. I mean, basically you got to look at it that way in the beginning, to understand, look, here's what happened. Don't dismiss it. Do a deep inventory on your ACEs. For more on that, go back to the previous episodes. Look at the book, Compassionate Recovery. You can visit our website for the podcast at podcast.compassionaterecovery.us. Continuing with my story, so I got out of one situation that I was basically living in a very small situation and cramped quarters for several years, and then into a house position, and then having quite a bit of responsibility and a tremendous amount of strain, stress, and complete inability to pause and look inward without being just hyper, just always on go, because I was watching a property and taking care of many, tenants and things like this. And it was pretty intense. And then, it turns out the boss was a snake and didn't take care of the financials and actually wound up taking money. So the practice of the bodhisattva is to, even when you help someone and then they slander you and they go around town gossiping, oh, he's a jerk, blah, blah, blah. Say you just gave somebody $100 for food and then you heard him at a meeting a couple days later saying, that guy's a jerk, or that girl's, whatever. So I just feel like it's obvious, we know when we've been wronged. It's part of our, our huge, we don't have to look too far in recovery to find our resentment list, but, what am I going to do? Be a hypocrite? I have to do the practices of a bodhisattva, taking the vows. I've done the practices for years, but really you have to keep applying it, because it's not so easy to go against the weight of infinite karma of beginningless lifetimes. There's a lot of weight. Imagine you're holding up a rock, let alone a planet, let alone a universe. There's a lot of density in our karma. Making this move and trying to get out from under, well, picking up where I left off, the idea of, retaliating or being mean or setting someone straight, or I can't do it. You can't do it in recovery. Anger is the dubious luxury of normal men, it says in the AA text. Can't do it in the bodhisattva path. Someone has slandered you, you bow your head and offer them. Well, you can look at what it says. We did a whole episode on that one in the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva series that we did over the course of, I think, about a year. Ended that one recently and started this series. But in that practice, basically, you just bow and offer compassion and offer humility, but then you can get the fuck out. You don't have to be involved in, a torture situation with anyone. And that was the thing that, an active therapy really clarified for me. She said, Darren, the thing is that you need to know that you deserve good things and it's okay. And it doesn't have to end in something, catastrophic. And again, if we look at the series, if we look at Compassionate Recovery, the book, and if we look at what we've been talking about for multiple episodes, and, we can segue into this in a moment, but you can really see the implications. And this is what the point I keep trying to make consistently in my work and my recovery is that it starts, for most of us, a good 80%, it starts with ACEs early. It develops into addiction, so the brain's affected in early childhood, and then the developmental issues are incurred, and then we layer upon that with more trauma and more in addiction, and more trauma and addiction and more trauma. Until, if we find recovery, we're left with this brain in the state of, really having been short-circuited all its life. Like, just imagine a brain sitting there and people are just like randomly cattle prodding it, and that's kind of the effect you're getting over a lifetime. So this is what we want to look at when we walk into the doors of recovery, when we walk into the doors of a Buddhist center or a place for mindfulness. And, for example, many people that I've known over the years, after a few minutes of mindfulness, are just bugged out, boom, spooked, run out the door. Why? Can't stand being in their body. Can't own the body experience. Many of us can relate to this. Understanding what happens in the brain in trauma, understanding what happens in the brain in addiction, and then understanding the healing tools of mindfulness, compassion, and so on. This is my mission. This is what I'm preaching to y'all. So let the preaching continue, understanding ACEs, physical abuse, emotional scars, a home where chaos reigns. This is our recap. These are ACEs, wounds that shape us, echoes of the storms we explored in the nervous system. And these are the previous episodes, window of tolerance, etc. They are the unseen baggage we carry, the ghosts that haunt our minds. Okay, so millions of people suffer from these. Everyone can relate. Trauma, when I was a kid, we didn't talk about recovery on TV. Now we've had TV series on it, which was, a decade or more ago. So these things are, trauma is really in the media, but I've been doing this work for a long time, so it's not a quickie fix, it's not a Band-Aid. This is serious stuff, and we got to do serious work to make serious progress. But it is prevalent. The neurobiology of ACEs. Your brain is affected by trauma. It is scarred in the prefrontal cortex where we reason. That part is impaired. The hippocampus where we have memories are stored. All of our memories are hijacked and sideswiped and tangled and mixed with, we've got a smell from one room and a feeling from another room. We get split off and fragmented during traumatic episodes, especially chronic ones go long term. Our stress response, constantly a child in fear, body ready to fight or flee. But we can't, but our little brains, The path to addiction, obviously increased vulnerability. And we get in, like I said, compounding. It's compounding. When we talk about in Buddhism, the compounding of phenomena, everything is compounded. The 5 aggregates are compounded. And really the understanding that everything that we experience with our senses really is an internal projection. We could be standing in the middle of an AI. Did you ever go to one of the AI exhibits somewhere? Or do your virtual reality, rather, goggles? It could really be like that for all we know. Because, in reality, if you just look at optics, we're seeing things upside down. It's the opposite. How we perceive is the opposite of how it really is. Optic science, very clear. So we could be in a dark room with goggles on some neurological level in terms of what is real. So remember, what is real is very, very relative and very, very subjective. Okay. The science of ACEs and addiction. We talked about this. Neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin. We know about all these for years, right? We understand that in addiction, we're jacked with this dopamine reuptake system. Our serotonin is out of whack. In other words, we don't have emotional and mental balance. Our emotional ability to regulate ourselves emotionally is ridiculous. We think we should be better just because we're sober. And we're not, and we beat ourselves up, and people around us tell us things like, you're not working the steps, and what did you do this, and pray about it, and this and that. Well, come on. We're talking about brain regions, the amygdala, the nucleus accumbens. These names might seem foreign, but they're really just where we have the seat of fear, the seat of pleasure. And these are all, it's not just anatomy. It's sort of the energetic internal architecture of our physical being, right? On the physical level, in the Dharma, we talk about our body, speech, and mind. The physical, the energetic, breath connected, if you're a yogi, and mental space. The prefrontal cortex, we mentioned. The amygdala, really, the brain's alarm system. This is the one that's easy to mention in conversation. The amygdala just goes off. It just goes off. It's always going off. It's always been going off on some level. Has your amygdala ever been at rest? If you've got an ACE score of 4 or above, I'll bet it hasn't. Unless you're doing smack or doing some serious opiates or things of that nature, or just trying to tranquilize yourself or drink yourself into a place or smoke whatever you're doing yourself into a place, right? So we just need to understand, yes, there's a reason why we're like this. Yes, there's a reason why we need to see, why we're seeking all these things to regulate with. And yes, we can choose and control, instead of doing this in a blind way, in a way that's what you could call sort of haphazard and random. And, it's kind of like the difference. I took these long trips, 3 long trips lately. It was completely devastating in terms of the effect on my nervous system. I'm just not I've driven so many hundreds of thousands of miles, and, doing the work. But still, it takes a lot of regulating. And I can't regulate with drugs or sedatives or something like this. I'm in recovery. Obviously, I'm driving. So what do you have to do? You can't even really do regulation of your breath while you're driving. So somehow you just have to laser focus and then learn to relax. Well, we have the capacity to laser focus on our resentments, on our fears, on our paranoia. On leg one of the journey, all I can think about is if this broke or if that broke, and are they going to medevac and this and that. The mind just goes off, and sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You just kind of got to deal until you can, have time to regroup and reset. Which is why, pause when agitated, we say in recovery. Don't send that email. If you're typing really fast on a text, stop, put the phone down, go for a walk. Pause when it's easy for us to get triggered, and it's easy for us to get dysregulated, and it's easy for us to get agitated. When we're in a more intense extreme situation, such as what I was mentioning, it's even harder. But all the more important that we need to have this as a regular part of our practice and a regular part of our, let's just say, our potential, our recovery potential, our dharma potential. And here we go, just continuing with regulating the neurotransmitters through mindfulness. We talked about our dopamine, which mindfulness has the effect on regulating dopamine levels, and it gives us balance. Instead of jacking us up on something like high-intense exercise, high-intensity interval training, hot power yoga, etc., that I love all this stuff, we can learn how to get our dopamine in on a slower drip so that we're not, getting jacked up and being an addict about it. Being an addict in our own mood regulation is something we need to understand and own, the multiplicity. And the multiplicity of selves and these different aspects of self competing for front and center. GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter, plays a crucial role in calming the mind and reducing anxiety. ACEs and addiction can lead to a deficiency in GABA. Do you see what I'm saying? Resulting in heightened anxiety and stress. So these points are super clear. Mindfulness practices that focus on relaxation and body awareness can increase GABA levels, promoting calmness and reducing anxiety. But if you're sitting there in your mindfulness space and it's overwhelming, you've got to learn how to do your mindfulness. Eventually, you need to learn how to sit still, but if you sit still, eventually you need to learn how to move. So either way, if your yoga is, part of a flow type of class, or if your yoga is something more of fast walking or getting on the elliptical or doing jumping jacks or jogging or swimming or biking or whatever you like, get it moving and get that stuff going so that you learn how to get to your, look at what your resting heart rate is, look at what your max heart rate is for your age, etc., find out your BMI and so forth. Address these things because movement, sitting still, let's put it this way. If you're already heavy and you haven't moved a lot and your feelings are covered in thick layers because of your early trauma, it's harder for you to get up and move, but you're the one who's got to move. You got to do it. Nobody's going to do it. You got to get up and move. Because you're sitting there trying to sit still and you're having difficulty in your body with the mindfulness practices, which are required for the recovery system to really work for you. You got to face the demons, face the fears. You got to chill out on the eating and do the better regulation of sleep. And hey, it's a work in progress. I'm not preaching. I'm the one up in the middle of the night with the cookies. So it is an ongoing, let's just say, effort to stay on the path or to veer back onto the path. So this whole idea of the healing potential of mindfulness isn't new. And the issue, however, of being a dysregulated addict and trying to do mindfulness and having it not work for you is not one that's addressed. And I guarantee you that this is a new topic. It's not a new topic, but it's addressed in such a way that we can offer ourselves loving kindness and compassion. We can offer ourselves, what we would call self-compassion, and understanding all points are valid from within the multiplicity of self. Self-acceptance, accepting of others. What's the difference? Treating self as other, treating other as just as important. Bowing to even the one who does stuff harmful. Not in the middle of the act. You're not going to sit there and bow to a robber. You're going to fight back or run or call 911 or whatever is required in the moment. But are we going to harbor feelings of resentment? Are we going to plot our revenge? Are we going to, gossip and slander and do harmful speech and all these things that are just toxic to us? See, once I used to dip my toe in the pool, but once I found the pool of compassion to rest in, it's a much easier place to be. It is the easier, softer way, as we say in recovery. But we got to learn how to get still and then keep that presence into our movement, like a dancing mindfulness type of a thing, like a Tai Chi kind of a thing. And there's just so many options out there. Look on meetup.com. If you're in a rural area or an area where we don't have a lot of these things offered, get on your Zoom. There's a lot of stuff offered. Or consider moving to a cooler place. That's what I did. I went from a place that I felt was like kind of a spiritual dead zone, kind of an intellectual flatline. And boy, am I glad to now be reacquainted with intelligent, intellectual, spiritual creatives in a place that's conducive to all those things. Okay, everybody, you understand my point with the recap, right? Is that we're just going through, I want you to have the building blocks. Read Compassion and Recovery. Buy a copy of the 12-Step Buddhist for yourself and a friend. Check it out. Do groups on it. Hit me up if you're a treatment provider. I can send you a couple of free copies. The general idea of what I've been preaching and leading up to for the whole time, since I started with the 12-Step Buddhist in 2009, all the way through today, this is the mission. This is the point. It's very clear how the building blocks progress, and then how we can progress as soon as we pick up the recovery torch, so to speak, and we keep that light burning. There's a light that got you to recovery. You get it fired up, keep blowing on it, keep revving it. Do mindful practice, but have support. Have psychological support, have therapeutic support, have group support, 12-step support, a buddy that you go to the gym and take a Zumba class with support. Whatever you do, get your circle of safety together, journal, produce results. Effort produces results, is what I'm trying to say. Keep a record of your results. Keep a record of your efforts. Look back on it later. Everything's good. Just keep going. I'm glad you're here. You know what they used to say in the program, we're all here because we're not all there. I'll leave you with that. Until next week, peace out and namaste.